food we eat today has between 15 and 75% less nutrition in it.
So it wasn't just the soil biology, it was the...
You know, there's this big fat of baby vegetables and all that, and it's cute.
Is that really what we're about? Like, we'd rather be growing food. Why would I pay so much for your organic chicken when I can buy this big, huge plate from Costco?
Virtually everything I learned about farming was learned right here at Strawberry Hill Farm. And I'm thankful to be able to come talk to Tim and Kirsten today. I've been here a number of times over the past 10, 15 years that they've been farming here. So I'm excited to be able to talk to them about why they farm, why organic, why they keep certain animals, and why they do what they do, because they're a staple small farm in our community. They're doing great things. They taught me great things 10 years ago when I worked here. So I'm excited to discuss all of those things with them today.
So we started farming here. We bought the farm in 2011. And then we did our first year of making our living from the farm in 2012. But I grew up in a family that gardened, but never had access to actual farming. And so it was always something I kind of wanted to do. And then in the early 2000s, we both took soil biology training. And then I worked with farmers using compost teas and compost and more natural means, as well as doing some with organic certification, and got to a point where I really wanted to be able to work these things out on my own farm rather than having to always either convince somebody else or and so we ended up buying the farm in 2011.
There was also the background that we had worked at a commercial greenhouse growing place where we grew plugs and cuttings, and there was a huge amount of chemical spraying, chemical fertilizer and all that went on there. And after a while you say, you know, you're starting a family and it's like, this can't be healthy. All this exposure to chemicals and that, there's got to be a better way of growing plants.
And when we did the soil biology training, we also looked at a lot of soils under microscope, and you could see how chemicals, be it sprays, fertilizers, how much of an impact it has in the soil. And so then that all translates into downstream stuff. It translates into the soil not staying where it's supposed to, and rains washing it into rivers, and then rivers getting polluted, and that going out into the ocean, and you get big dead zones in the ocean. And there's so many problems associated with chemicals. And when you get to see the biology that's actually living there under your feet and making things grow in a natural setting, it makes you want to respect it and take care of it.
So it wasn't just the soil biology, it was the consistency and everything that made up the soil. Because a little bit it would be the like the microbes and the fungi that are living there, which a lot of people don't think about.
No.
But it was also the erosion that would happen every raining season. And,
When the settlers first went west in the U.S., and I'm sure it was the same in Canada, they were met with really fertile soils in the plains. And if you look at the history of those soils over the years of chemical agriculture, the organic matter's gone down. Everything's just gotten worse to the point where, now if you were to try to farm without chemicals, there's quite a rebuild process that has to happen to bring the soil back into a state where it can even support itself.
Right.
Well, and you had posted something recently that really struck me, and it was something that I knew intuitively, but I didn't have the numbers to back it up. So I'm curious to know what you think with regards to how our food system has changed, how less nutritionally dense our food is. I think I inherently know that because you buy food from the grocery store and it's not as good. I don't want to tell anybody that vegetables are bad, but vegetables aren't as good as they used to be. So can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So studies have shown, and this is even 10, 15 years ago, so it wouldn't have gotten any better. If anything, it's the other way. That the food we eat today has between 15 and 75% less nutrition in it than it had in the 40s and 50s when they started measuring that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you take an average point in there, you need to eat roughly twice as much today to get the same nutrition as you would have back then. It's not, like you said, it's not to say the vegetables are bad, but the amount of actual nutrition has decreased over time. And you might say, well, why would that be? There's a couple of main culprits. One is constantly breeding for the new varieties that'll grow bigger, faster, larger, more bulk, often at the expense of what's in them. Because if you can make a carrot grow twice as big, it may be water. If you're getting paid for the carrot by weight, then why not?
Yeah.
And so a lot of our commercial food system is all based on weight. If you can gain more weight, you get more money. And so that's the objective, as opposed to, does it really have actually more nutrition in it? So that's one side. And then you combine the other side where the soil biology creates so many organic compounds and natural fertility that you get a lot more nutrition in just from a better soil system. It's why things taste better when from an organic system, or even a home garden or things like that. It's one of the reasons that people say to us, well, the carrots or the vegetables we get from you taste like we remember when we were a kid.
Yeah.
So you can make another way to make things grow big is to put lots of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium on them chemically, and you'll get a big something to grow. But it doesn't mean, again, that it has all the amino acids and everything it needs to bring actual nutrition into it. So those are the two main culprits.
There is a third factor too, that where so much of our produce is trucked in from far away, they pick them prematurely ripe to hold up in shipping and that. But many vegetables and fruits in that, they actually have higher nutritional value when they're more developed. So, there's this big fat of baby vegetables and all that, and it's cute. They're tender and all that. But a lot of them don't have the same developed nutritional value as if they were fully ripe. And
there's a few other things there as well. I think that whether they're being artificially gassed to ripen them,
yes,
or they're using artificial coverings like the new appeal that they're using on some vegetables as well. So I think that there's a lot with regards to our food system that it needs to go far away from the farm, and I think that is in large part detrimental to most of our food system, that people aren't eating where they are at, and they're not eating in season. They want their strawberries in December, and they want to be able to eat a well-rounded tropical diet 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
I think people struggle with that. People don't like being told what to do or what they can have.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, as farmers, recognize, okay, well, we have customers that want strawberries 12 months of the year, but we can't provide them with strawberries 12 months of the year.
Right.
And to get a little more technical into the whole nutritional side, like she was saying, the more developed the fruit gets, the more nutrition comes into it. Calcium is something that's really important. But calcium comes in more slowly than your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so it needs a little bit more time and to get that. And also it needs a little bit more stress. So if the conditions are all perfect, then you won't necessarily get the calcium uptake that you would under more stress. So these are just all things that affect how much nutrition is in the food we eat now.
I find people who are just starting out gardening too, that they'll research fertilizers, and they'll find out, okay, NPK, those are 3 things I need to buy my Miracle Grow, and you have your 10-10-10 or whatever, and that's what people are focused on, where they're not really thinking about, okay, you need calcium, you need magnesium, you need all of these other nutrients that go into your soil as well, and that's why we're trying to push people to use your eggshells in your garden, to have some calcium in there, and because it's really important, as far as I've researched, for fruiting bodies. In order for it to actually produce fruit, yes, you need your NP and K, but you need calcium for them to create bigger and better fruit.
Yeah.
Right, but people need to realize too that they need to have patience. When you start going the organic route, things take time. You won't necessarily see the nutritional benefit in the first year, but you have to have patience, because if you don't and you revert to the chemical fertilizers and that, you'll kill off a lot of the beneficial bacteria, and you actually set yourself back. So things take time, and human beings don't like to be patient and wait. We want to, hurry up and get something done.
Oh yeah. Well, we all, like I said, we all want it now. We want it whenever we want it.
And we don't want to change. Like I found that in myself when somebody introduced me to the whole concept of eating with the seasons. Okay, and I don't do it 100%, but a lot. We largely do. It takes time to get used to the concept. But what do you want? You want to pay the high grocery store bills? Or do you want to grow for yourself and know that it's healthy and...
And there are a lot of really delicious and creative ways to eat things like carrots and sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
People don't realize how much you can actually store.
Yeah.
Like we do a winter box program in addition to our summer box program.
Yeah.
And I probably get more comments, just because I see the emails coming in, I probably get more positive comments from the winter one than I do the summer one. Even though there's less in it, but the expectation is so much lower, you know, but you can still have leeks and onions and cabbage and Brussels sprouts, kale, salad.
Yeah.
Well, we do some salad from the greenhouse here, along with all your delicious roots, your potatoes, your parsnips, your carrots, sweet potatoes, squashes. There's so much that can be cooked in the winter. With a little creativity, you can eat really, really well with the seasons.
I find people are, most farms will end up being specialized, and you guys aren't one of those specialized farms. And with regards to, there's produce, that's one thing. I mean, we've got a greenhouse here filled with produce, but animals are a big part of that, where you see a lot of farmers will specialize, whether it's potatoes or chicken farmers. So why do you guys keep chickens and pigs and cow? You do a little bit of everything.
You want to know the real reason?
Yeah,
I'm
let's be honest,
I'm the problem.
Sounds familiar. I do that.
Yeah.
In my previous work, I ran up against so many times, well, we can't do that because of this, or so many reasons why it wouldn't work, that when I actually got the ability to do it, I wanted to do everything. And so I'm guilty of that. Pretty much. Okay, I drew the line in a few places, like I drew the line at milking and said I'm not going to milk.
I love milking.
Well, that's...
I can milk the goats then.
I don't mind the concept of it. I don't want to be tied down.
That's true.
To us, milking and
That
tying
was
you
my
down
big
to...
argument.
You're not already tied down with a massive farm like this?
We are,
Yep.
but... So I don't know. But you have to draw a line somewhere, I figure. So we drew our line at milk. And the other thing that I have drawn a line at, although strayed a little bit here and there, is trying to grow things that, it's kind of the Salatin approach. We want to grow what people are used to, just do a really good job of it.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to grow trying to raise emu or llamas or alpacas or something like that. While cool, that's not really our focus. Our focus is to grow the main ones we're used to, the chicken, the beef, the pork, and just try to do a really good job.
Yeah.
Now,
We did, like, we raised ducks a couple years and forget, we raised a couple other things, but you have to be careful too. When you're growing as much as we are, you can get scattered in so many different directions that the stress can be unbelievable. And that's what we had to say. Okay, no, we need to consolidate a bit and do what we can do well and focus on not completely the basics, because we do have some other fun stuff in there, but like, you know, at one time we wanted to raise sheep and lamb, but it doesn't really fit in our production cycle. And so we just said, well, great, there's a lot of other people raising lamb, we'll buy from them.
And at the end of the day, you're a business too. Like, unlike what we do, we're a funny farm. So we just get everything because it's funny. And what I've been looking into trying to find some emu because I want them. And I think that having massive birds would be hilarious. But you have to think about what your customer base wants and what you'll be able to actually sell. Because otherwise, if you grow it for fun, it doesn't really do anything. Like some things do have multi-purpose. Like I saw last year, I was really excited to see the pigs in the strawberry patch, to be able to till that up and to be able to use chicken manure as heavy nitrogen for different things. I remember that when I was here. We doused this with chicken poo, and being able to use things like that is huge, but you still need to make money. You need to pay your bills.
Yeah.
And what have been some struggles on that front, whether it's trying to convince people to pay the higher price, because organic, it takes a lot more work, so people don't recognize a carrot is not necessarily a carrot. They're different. So what have been some hardships there for you talking to your customers or new customers, trying to convince them, hey, this is different than the grocery store?
Yeah.
interestingly, that conversation has changed
Yeah.
over the last few years.
Yeah.
So originally it was very, very price conscious, but now we're getting to a point where, because of the high cost of transport and I'm going to say the centralization of everything going through a grocery store, our prices are actually not bad.
Yeah.
And so
There's a few things that are, and some people who want to argue the high cost thing focus on that. But when you start looking at the other costs and that, we are actually under the grocery store in some cases. Like right now, sweet potatoes, we match Superstore.
Wow.
So, and squash, we've consistently come in lower. So,
our goal is to be able to provide good, healthy food to the majority of people.
well, and anybody can focus on a given price at a given time and use that to argue anything you want to. But what many of our customers have come back and said to us is that they tracked their grocery bill by buying from us, and they're actually spending less overall on food. Some of them chalk that up to no impulse purchases at the grocery store, but just in general, they actually are spending less, even though the sticker might look higher initially on some things. So that's encouraging.
And that comes back to the nutritional density too. That
Yes.
if you're staying fuller longer because you bought better produce,
Right.
you're not going to be snacking as much. Whereas you're going to be,
right.
with grocery store food, you're going to be full of fiber or full of carbs because that's what they generally breed things for. And you're going
Right.
to end up being full for a little bit and then you'll crash because
Right.
of the sugar crash.
Right, right.
So Nolly's husband, when they started dating, he would buy his chicken from Costco. And he was like, why would I pay as much? Why would I pay so much for your organic chicken when I can buy this big, huge plate from Costco? And he said, now I won't go back to Costco.
Yeah.
You eat all that, but you don't feel any fuller. He said, I can eat way less and feel fuller and enjoy the experience a whole lot more. Our main business is through a box program, which is something that allows us to keep our price lower, because it allows us to more match wholesale, because people have committed to a certain amount and we can pack more efficiently. The challenge with that is when people receive that, then they have to figure out ways to utilize it. So it's not for everybody. But over the years, that has been consistent for us, and we've tried to keep upgrading it. So the last few years, we've allowed people to swap, so they can take items out of their box and put in items that they would prefer. And that's gone quite well. So if people are really conscious about not spending money and about saving money, it's a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
And to eat well at the same time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have a faithful customer base and people that now understand what it's like to buy and the reason you buy good produce.
Right.
But I think you're also having issues, not just with that. I mean, at the end of the day, trying to make money.
Yeah.
And the carbon tax has been a big thing of late, especially as a small farm. And I think with that video that I shared of yours, Tim, that people think that $5,000 isn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
But to a small operation, to me, that's a lot of money. For a small operation like yours, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
How has that affected you? I mean, it's been in use for a little bit now. How has that affected the way that you guys prepare and do things here? Has it just made things more expensive, or is it just making life harder because your expenses are higher?
I would say it makes expenses in general. It's driving expenses up.
Yeah.
And you have to come up with that $5,000 out of somewhere. But carbon tax is one thing, but then you add to that the high interest rates. And we're relatively new at farming, in the sense that, we're for 13 years now. And we got the farm next door to try to have a little more critical mass for land and stuff. So we're still paying for a lot of stuff. So interest affects us. We're not a multi-generational farm. So you have carbon tax, you have interest, you have wages that have gone up significantly. And yet we have people on fixed income that come and buy food from us every week. And it's tough to raise the price, but you have to. Because at the end of the day, the amount that's left in between is so slim. It's really a gamble as to whether we'll end up with a plus at the end of the year.
And, I know it's good business practice to do this, but you're just always looking at your costs and what you're spending. Do we have to do that? Okay, how can we make this more efficient? How can we do that? You're just always working at that.
The issue with the carbon tax that I see is it's something that's mandated without very much ability to make changes. In other words, we do home delivery. There's people, we have clients who are in wheelchairs, can't get out, or for one reason or another, they want it home delivered. So we'll home deliver, but we have to pay carbon tax on the fuel to home deliver.
Yeah.
So the government may say, oh, farmers are tax exempt. That's only for the diesel that goes in my tractor. That's not for the car that goes down the road from field to field. That's not for the vehicle that goes in to get tractor parts. That's not for the vehicle that takes my stuff to market.
Not for the electric that runs your coolers and freezers.
And so it seems a little bit like a cruel joke that at the same time they're raising electric rates at a fairly steep. So they're saying, go electric, go electric, go electric. And we're going to raise those prices too. It seems
Not
like
the answer.
And so we put a lot of miles on our delivery van. So I looked at getting another delivery van. So I was at the dealership and he said, I don't have any gas vans in here, but I have an electric one out there. He said, we all know that electric's not where it's at. You can't get far enough to deliver anything on electric charge. And so the only van that's in the lot that I could buy is electric, but that'll barely get me to Fredericton and back. So what am I going to do? So that the options aren't there. And even if they were, they're super expensive options. So the idea that charging me a carbon tax on my ability to get food to the consumer, that somehow that's going to make me look for alternatives. What's my alternative? Is it to not take food to those who need it? Well, that's not a good alternative. So that's where I struggle a bit. And then they also say, we're giving it back in programs. Well, first of all, a number of the programs that they're funding are ones that we already, are for things that we already do.
As an organic farm, you're already pretty efficient.
And we're already doing stuff to keep carbon in the soil and to rotate our livestock and do all of these things, which are great things to do, but we're already doing them. So we can't really, unless we try to fudge something, we can't say this is a new practice.
And then you have to pay somebody to pull together all the paperwork and document it all. And we did some figuring and would end up paying somebody almost as much as we get back for it. So what's the point in that? It's set up to, some people think it's a really great program and it's going to save the planet. It's not. It's a net zero, or actually more of a cost on the farmer than anything else.
If you had 1,000 acres, you could pay somebody to sit in the office and do all these programs and get all these government rebates. It makes sense. When you're at our scale, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Any smaller than us, why would you?
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to the guy in the Wicklow about some drain tile. And he said, oh, there's a government program that'll pay 30% of your drain tile. I said, okay, what do I need? Oh, you need a farm plan, and then you need an application, and then you're probably going to be waiting 15 months. So I went and bought $140 of drain tile, and I'm going to do it myself. Like, there's no sense in trying to go through that program. Whereas if I had 50 or 100 acres that I wanted to tile, well then, farmers do creative things like set up a separate company so that they can bill each other and still get government money and all this kind of stuff. But is that really what we're about? Like, we'd rather be growing food.
That's 100%.
And it costs us to prove it to them. What's the point?
Yeah. No, I really like that, Tim. At the end of the day, I just want to grow food. That's what most farmers, any farmer I talk to, that is their goal. Whether it's beef, chicken, produce, you just want to grow food. That's what you're good at. You're not necessarily good at accounting. You're not necessarily good at sales or marketing. It's getting more and more hard through social media. So the more food you can grow and the more people you can bring in to actually sell it to, the more money you can make.
Yeah.
But if you're not making enough money at the end of the day, it makes your life a heck of a lot harder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, back to your original question about why the diversity. So part of the reason for that, apart from my being a sucker for diversity, is that 20% of your customers yield 80% of your sales. And so if you get those loyal customers already buying your vegetables, then it's easier to sell them your eggs and your pork and your chicken and your beef. And so you end up with, it's a good way to make your advertising go a long ways, because we all eat all those things. I mean, we do have a bunch of vegetarians as well, but still, there's a good diversity there. So having a diversity helps, especially in a little province like New Brunswick, where we don't have a Toronto population or a Montreal population where we can go and sit at market and sell, $1,000 worth of microgreens in a weekend. We just don't have that kind of market to be able to access.
Well, and our population is so spread out. Like, you could go to St. John or Fredericton or Moncton and maybe do that, but it's like you said, you're not in Toronto. So it's not like you're just on the side of the road with a cart and say microgreens right here, and then you sell right out.
No.
Yeah.
Which makes it a heck of a lot harder, especially being in Pembroke, because you're not really near anything.
No.
So it's hard to get anywhere too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Farmers just want to grow food.
That's
I
right.
want to grow food. I want to figure it out
Yeah.
better, how to do things better. So how, for people who don't know, I think most of your animals are multifaceted. They do more than one thing. They're not just meat, they're not just eggs.
Right.
What are some of the things that you utilize, whether it's cattle or pigs or chickens even? What do you use them for outside of their meat and byproducts?
Yeah. So cattle was the first thing we bought, because a whole section of the farm has clay soils that are not very well drained but grow great grass. And so what are we going to do with those? So we got the cattle. It seemed like a no-brainer. Now, as soon as you have cattle, then you need equipment to harvest hay. So maybe we should have thought twice about it. But anyway, that's how that went. And then they are in the barn, and we use the bedding pack from that to help with our fertility needs. Then we also got laying hens.
And meat birds.
And meat birds. The laying hens are great, really just because eggs are such a great addition to have.
Well, they add fertility to the soil because we move them through the pastures, move them through different areas of the farm. They add a lot of fertility to the soil. And they also eat bugs and grubs.
That's why I'm surprised you're not doing ducks. That's why we're raising a bunch of ducks, is to eat all the potato bugs and all the slugs. We're just going to put them right in the garden.
Good luck.
This is where one of the...
It can go either way. So sometimes it works great and they eat the bugs off your plants and that, but other times they eat your plants. Because
proceed cautiously.
Definitely.
Okay.
This has not been tried.
Just be careful. Just be careful, and maybe start with a strip that goes across your garden that includes all the different kinds of plants, and see what they do before you turn them loose. Because when we had ducks, they ate all the vegetation in sight.
Yeah.
Now, when I say the chickens eat bugs, it's things like the June bug grubs and things like that. Yeah. So they're eating a lot of the pests out of the fields and helping the fertility that way. We don't turn the chickens loose in the vegetable patch. We learned not to without even trying. Came in the greenhouse one day and every single ripe tomato had a bite out of it. I was like, oh, what is going on here? Just a couple chickens got out, made themselves at home in the greenhouse, and they just went and took a bite out of every ripe tomato.
There's a reason why your waterers are all red for chickens, because they like the color red.
So,
I thought that was only bulls, but all right, chickens too.
Yeah, so it's in theory it's awesome. Just be careful.
There's the other side. We talked a little about organic. I don't know if we're going to get back to talking a little bit more about organic. The system isn't perfect, but one of the challenges with it is the droppings from the birds, and then you're walking through that and harvesting. So you with organic, you're restricted. You can't put manure on within what they call the 90-120 day rule. And depending on how picky your inspector is, they might consider droppings as being a problem. So we steer away from that.
Yeah.
The broilers on pasture are a really great addition because they're in shelters, but they're moved daily. And so the fertility that they leave behind is just amazing.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing we got on the farm was pigs. And they eat a lot of vegetables and things that go by. We also put them in, you saw them in the corn patch, I think. So
and they help turn up virgin soil, or if your soil's really compacted in a certain area and you want to change it into a garden or whatever, or plant perennials or fruit or whatever, just turn the pigs loose in there for summer. And they just turn it right up into lovely soil.
So having the background in soil biology, what is your opinion then on till versus no-till? Is no-till kind of a pipe dream for people who have a very tiny garden and can put compost on it? Or is it something that really you don't want to be bothering that mycelium, you don't want to be bothering the soil biology that is anaerobic, so under the ground?
Well, the biology in the ground should be aerobic. If it's anaerobic, then you don't have good drainage or you're doing something wrong. But our philosophy about till versus no-till is a little bit of tilling in moderation is where it's at. If you look at charts of the soil biology, if your ultimate no-till field is a forest, and your forest is not going to grow your best vegetables or even your best grass crops, so you need to give some kind of disturbance in order to keep that soil actively working. When you turn it over, you stimulate a lot of air, you stimulate the earthworms, everything else to come in and eat. So that's really important.
And you also keep in check the organisms that are not as ideal for vegetable production, but are super ideal for perennials like blueberries and raspberries, that kind of thing.
Are you worried about soil compaction then, or is it something that you're doing at such a small scale that you're really not putting these 100,000-pound tractors with combines on them, or is it still something to kind of be mindful of?
The issue isn't really the weight of the equipment. It's the number of times the soil is turned over and the amount of chemicals that are put in. Because what people don't realize is that the soil structure, when you lift a handful of nice soil, it's got a crumble structure built by bacteria. The same thing that sticks bacteria to our hands sticks the globules of soil together. So when you have healthy soil and it's like a sponge, it's got all these areas where the water can go down, the water can come back. You can put temporarily a lot of weight on that and it won't destroy it. What does destroy it is putting a salt nitrogen fertilizer in there that desiccates all that bacteria. Or if you keep flipping it over so that it never gets a chance to grow the fungal mycelia. That's how you're going to destroy that soil, and it'll end up being like when we first bought the farm and on the flat down near the river. What could be beautiful soil. We had a rain and it washed these like ravines down into, and where did our soil go? It's all running down the ditches and ending up in the river. But that's because there was no soil structure in there. Whatever they had done for the last 50 years did not promote the soil structure. So by reducing tilling and by not putting the harmful chemicals in the ground, then the ideal thing is to get that perfect balance where the soil biology is happy, turning over, getting mixed to the point at which one type of organism is feeding another. You've got an active biological system, but not so much that you actually kill it.
So on a very small scale, permaculture's great, and you can react to issues in that, but for a larger scale, it's not real practical, and I'm not sure it would really work out.
It's not sustainable unless everybody's doing it. If you're trying to run a production farm, it makes sense to try to be as sustainable as possible. Well, to be as efficient and sustainable as possible. But when you're running a farm, you can't really put into practice all of the food forest and all of the permaculture practices that you really dream of being able to do.
Right, and I'm not sure that long term some of the permaculture practices are really ideal for vegetable production. Definitely for, like I said, the perennial things and the fruit crops and that, but for some of the vegetable production that has a high need for bacteria, bacterial type soil, you also run the risk if you're not in a permaculture situation, unless you have it all right, like all the conditions correct in the soil, you can get a much higher disease pressure. Like if you get anaerobic conditions like underneath and you don't see it, you just...
The other thing is when you scale up no-till to a conventional size, a lot of people are using sprays to create that. So spraying Roundup. And then you get all the harmful effects of that, some of which we don't really know.
And then there's the weed issue too. Some areas have very persistent weeds of certain types that really are only kept in check by light tillage, unless you're going to use weed killer, chemical weed killer, and that's not something we'll do.
Yeah.
But it's all things in moderation,
do you want me to turn on
really.
the fan for a minute while they reset that, cool it down? Or everybody's sweating pretty good.
Okay, last question, and then we can get out of the greenhouse because we're all sweaty, that I've been extremely curious about. So I have learned virtually everything I know about farming from that one summer that I worked for you guys. I'm not joking. I've researched a little bit. I have a bachelor's degree in biology, but I paid so much close attention to both of you guys and everybody I worked with that I'm like, all right, take note. Everything Tim is doing, figure it out.
Yeah.
Why organic? To me, as an outsider that's not really familiar with organic farming, really, to me it seems expensive, difficult to maintain your certification, and it just makes life a little bit harder. So what makes you guys, after 13 years keeping the farm, why are you still organic instead of dropping your certification in favor of other practices just to make your lives a little bit easier and maybe things a little cheaper? Or am I completely off base?
Well, most good things in life, most things worth having in life, you have to work for. So there's that. He's the expert on the rest of the subject.
Well,
is it just a business decision? And I don't want to criticize organic farming by any means, but I'm like, it seems like it can be very difficult to maintain that high standard because everybody knows organic means something. Yeah. It's not just saying all natural, it's not just saying pasture raised. Organic means you worked your ass off to maintain a certain level of certification for that.
So that's exactly why we do it.
Yeah.
Because organic, the word still means something.
Yeah.
And I worked for other farm where some stuff was organic, some stuff wasn't. And you're always being asked, well, is your stuff organic? And you'd say, well, this is, but this isn't, and this. Basically, you have to be prepared for a big, long explanation as to why you're not organic or why your stuff is as good as organic. So I said, if that's the case, why not just keep this thing simple and just be organic? And then I'm not always explaining how I compare to organic, because organic is obviously a standard if everybody asks that question. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to be it. That decision was informed by the fact that we'd seen, well, all we talked about soil biology. So organic is kind of a framework that gives you options because there are things that can be used against pests but are organic. So working within that framework can be helpful and hindrance at the same time. Mm-hmm. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, you're pretty much there anyway. You're doing a lot of the principles, you're doing a lot of the stuff, so you may as well spring the extra 5 or 10% to do the extra little work to get that certification.
But also, it's a standard outside of ourselves, because we know a number of people who said, well, I follow the organic standards, and that, okay, first of all, the organic standards are constantly changing, so unless you are actually keeping up on them all the time, you don't know that you really are. And some people who have said that to us are actually using very harmful substances. And so it's just better it's a standard outside of us. And it's just better to say, yeah, and we've had somebody come in, and it's like being in court for 2 to 3 days out of every single year.
It's not
and
fun.
You get questioned, and you have to prove everything they want to know.
And we usually grumble through that process.
Yeah,
Or I do.
and every year we wonder if it's worth it, and maybe we won't do this next year, but every year we do it again, because it's
It
a
means
standard. Well, it means something. It's a standard, and
Don't tell the inspector I said this, but it has made us better farmers because of the records we have to keep. I do not like keeping records, but I have to keep records for the organic standard. And so now there's a sheet in the barn that we write how many eggs we get each day. That's because of being certified. And we have a little problem we're dealing with right now where the egg production has all of a sudden plummeted. Well, if I didn't have that chart, I wouldn't know what day it started and exactly, but now I know, okay, it started on this day, what did we change, what can we fix, so that we can remedy the situation. Another thing about it is that I've had people say, well, local's where it's at. Or fresh, people don't care as much about organic, and our tagline is fresh, local, organic, because I think that that's probably the order in which people are interested in it. But maybe local is more important than organic. Does it mean organic's not important? If I can be local and organic, why not? So we're just I guess we've set that bar for ourselves, and that's...
And then the other thing you have to look at is what is the alternative. So we drop our organic certification, but other than that, our costs are not going to drop in relation to, I believe, how much our sales would drop. And then everybody will expect us to drop all our prices because we dropped our organic certification, but we can't drop our prices by the amount they expect us to. So you have to...
Yeah. And even local farms, like New Brunswick is primarily agricultural, and you can still have issues with people spraying glyphosate. And so whether or not you are natural or local, having that extra certification of actually being organic, it means something. You've had third-party inspection, and it means something to everybody outside of this place. It means something to you guys. That's the reason you've kept it, and it means something to other people and your customers, and that's why they keep coming back.
Yeah. And then a couple of years after an inspection, when I've been particularly grumpy, I've said something to our daughter, who wants to take over the farm, about maybe we just should stop this. And she's like, Dad, no, it's really, really important. So another reason for that is to keep that continuity for the next generation, so that because it's important to her, it's important to those people.
The 10th of December, 75.
All of it struggle.
Vows were made to be together until they reach the
I like it.
other side.
I think it's doing well. Was it a pure volition? Or
Never
what?
dies.
Thank you. I will let us cool off now. We can go outside.
I'll turn the fan on.
Actually, before you do that, Tim, can we do an intro real quick?